Good afternoon and welcome to Pop Talk. I'm Hannah Petrie, Unitarian Universalist minister and proud board member of POP, that's Pasadena's Organizing for Progress, the grassroots organization that is leading Pasadena to become the model progressive city of the 21st century. My co-host, Ellen Snortland, has the day off, so I'm flying solo. Today on our show, we interview Charles Thomas of Outward Bound Adventures, based in Pasadena and Altadena, an organization he has served off and on for many years and whose focus ranges from outdoor living skills to gang intervention programs. Before we learn all about it, we'll play some music to get us in the mood. One of my favorite R&B artists, who is not very well known, her name is Alice Smith, and this one is called Cabaret. And welcome back to Pop Talk. That was Alice Smith with the track Cabaret from her album She. And now we'll turn to our interview with Charles Thomas. So, Charles, welcome to Pop Talk.
Thank you.
I remember when you were my parishioner at neighborhood church going way back about 13 years. You showed me around the offices of Outward Bound, as well as a video about the organization, how it got started. So I was wondering if you could give our listeners kind of the nutshell version of OBA's history and your vision for it, and how did it come out of your own coming of age experiences?
Sure. While we were listening to that intro song, I realized how long it's been since I just sat still and listened to a song. It felt really quite good. But getting back to OBA, so there's a well-kept secret in the city of Pasadena, and actually across the nation, is that OBA is the oldest nonprofit in the United States. It's been dedicated to engaging underserved, overlooked, avoided populations and connecting them to natures and careers in conservation. And so OBA actually started in 1959, but it started at Cleveland Elementary School. There was a lady that came out from Chicago and well, actually from outside of Chicago, and she was a science teacher, and she noticed that as she took her students outdoors, it tended to upgrade their grades, and it also upgraded their social behavior. So she started taking them outdoors more and more. But something else that she noticed that was very important, that there were not very many people of color getting outdoors at that time. And we still have that issue today, but it's changed tremendously. But she got together with a group of concerned parents, and most of them, they're Asian, Native American, African American, and Latino. And so she said, look, why don't we start taking our kids outdoors more often? Anyway, she had started a science club there at Cleveland Elementary School, the same school that's known for breaking the color barrier in baseball. That's where Jackie Robinson went, number
That's
42.
right.
But anyway, she got together, and the science club formed a junior Audubon club in the 60s. Then in 62, it became Outward Bound Adventures, and in 64, it incorporated. So it's now known as the oldest nonprofit in the United States.
No,
Uh,
oh my gosh. Well, and
yeah,
it's not to be confused with the national Outward Bound, right?
correct. So the National Outward Bound is a much larger organization, nationally and internationally. However, we were once affiliates. So in 2009 and 2010, we affiliated. National Outward Bound tends to put its focus on leadership skills in the outdoors, but OBA, and it tends to focus on more affluent populations,
Sure.
mostly middle class and upper middle class whites.
Mhm.
OBA has always been in low income communities of color, and not just Pasadena, Altadena, Northwest Pasadena, Altadena, but also San Bernardino, Palmdale, South LA. We were one of the first organizations to move into the Watts area after the riots. And so during 2009, 2010, when we affiliated with the National Outward Bound, they were the ones that initiated and said, hey, you guys are really doing some of the same stuff we're doing. And we said, well, actually not, because our
Mhm.
focus is in these communities of color,
Right.
and we're trying to move them towards jobs. They're just developing leadership skills. And so
Right.
after a two-year engagement, we decided it's probably best if we went our separate ways. We just stay
Interesting. Yeah, it sounds
outbound
like they
adventures.
wanted a little of what you had, but you didn't really want what they had.
Well, yeah, they did. That was part of the thing, Hannah, is that they said when they came in, they said, we love the programs that you guys run. And then when they came in, they said, we want you to change all those programs so that it caters to a broader audience. And what they were saying is caters to a more affluent white audience. And we said, thank you, but no thanks. We're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Sure. So at what point did OBA begin to really home in on programs that look at gang intervention?
I think it was really from the beginning. Remember, I mentioned that we were one of the first organizations to go into Watts after the
Right.
1965 Watts riots. And the idea was that the leaders in OBA at that time, one was a former Tuskegee Airman.
Mm,
One was the first African American in the Sierra Club
wow.
out here. And then there's Helen Mary Williams, who came out from the Chicago area. But they were watching the Watts riots on TV. And they noticed that a lot of the people that were looting and doing some of the stuff that was happening around the stores, they were noticing that there were a few key figureheads that were sort of moving people around because the news was capturing all this stuff, right? And so Mrs. Williams came up with the idea, why don't we go, these are real leaders. Why don't we go out there and recruit from the gangs that were out there? And
Mm,
so some of the first leaders in OBA were recruited from the Watts area, and they became lead instructors to work here.
oh,
And so
wow.
that was our first touch, sort of blush with gang life. We moved them out of the gang life, taught them to be leaders and be staff here. But we've always had um, worked in gang affiliated, gang impacted neighborhoods, not just in Altadena and Pasadena. You recall in the 80s and the 90s that there were more gangs per capita here than there
Right.
were in parts of LA because we're so small. Yeah, we've always
Interesting.
been involved in it. That's never been our principal population, but it's always been a large segment of our population.
And like those original leaders you recruited, did they stay affiliated with OBA for a long time? I mean, it sounds like it changed the course of their lives.
It did, indeed it did. There's some tragedy in there, but there's a whole lot of success. And like my first instructor, when I went out and with OBA in 1969, he was from the original Brims, which is a big gang out in South Central LA. And I learned a lot from him. I mostly learned, that pull my weight, don't make anybody work harder than me. Because there's a funny story that it's in my book that I won't share right now, but basically the story is that I said, I'm not doing the dishes. And, he used some gang therapy, which was to just sock me in my chest as hard as he could. And he said, do you feel like doing the dishes now?
Uh,
you know,
so
and,
you
you couldn't get away with that now, but anyway, no.
right. But you started off as one of the youth in the program.
I did. There was a program that the probation department, I think, was funding. It was in the in the early 70s, actually. I went on my first experience in 69 or somewhere around there, but in the early 70s, there's something called the Regional Diversion Program. And what it was created to divert youth away from gangs. And I had been running around with a bunch of hard heads running the street. And so the founder of OBA said, you should come on these OBA trips and see if you like it. And I had no interest in the environment, no interest in the natural world. I mean, I was running the streets and it was a lot of fun. And so I went on the first trip and it wasn't an epiphany. Lights didn't go off. And I said, oh, I'm going to dedicate my whole life to going
Right.
outdoors. It took quite a while. And in fact, I wound up being incarcerated for almost 2 years. And when I got out, she was there and OBA was there, and they said, "Come on, we're taking you up to the Sierras for 14 days." And I said, I'm just getting out of incarceration." And they took me up, and it took a while, but ultimately, what I realized was that the freedom doesn't lie in just someone providing you, hey, let's go here and look at this. it really lies in what you do to change a young person's life and how they view the world. That's
Mhm.
what OBA did to me. It really installed a fine sense of fairness and freedom for making me see the world differently.
Well, sure, because I mean, if youth and young adults are stuck in a neighborhood,
Hmm.
naturally they're gonna feel their options are limited.
Right,
But but
exactly.
but when they realize that the world's a much bigger place, even just within LA County, right? And just the mountains being right up there, I could see how it just changes their mindset, uh, and allows for other possibilities to kind of enter their mind to be like, well, what about this? Or,
Right.
maybe I could look into this community college program and,
Hmm.
just have a sense of self-confidence.
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
been aware that there have been a number of shootings in Altadena in just the last month or so, and it does appear
Hmm.
like gang activity is kind of on the uptick. And can you give our listeners a sense of where that's at right now? And is it because of the pandemic, or what's been
Yeah. So there has been an uptick in gang activity, and it surprised me too because I thought that uh, that whole gang element had been pretty much dispersed, and it really wasn't as big as it was now. Of course, as you get older, you move further away from some of the things that you really understood well. So I received my my license to, they call it an LTO, a license to operate in some of the gang areas in Pasadena a long time ago.
Mm.
And this uptick in gang activity had the city manager so worried and the police department so worried, they brought in two outside gang interventionists that knew this community well.
Mm.
And it's funny, but they both wound up calling me
Hmm.
and they said, "Hey, we're having problems. Can you do what OBA did
Yeah.
back in 2010 when we got a huge slug of money from Obama? Was it 2010, 2011? But we got a huge slug of money from Obama's administration, and we created a gang intervention work program that kept them outdoors working on trails and kept them outdoors for quite a while, for 9 months,
Oh,
actually.
wow.
Um, so anyway, those two guys called me up and I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "There's been 5 shootings and there's some key players that are involved in it." And I said, "Who are the key players?" They also called me though because one of my cousins was a big time uh, trip. And so they said, "We want you to bring him back into the fold and we want you to do what OBA does." So anyway, yes, there's been an uptick and it's really a lot of retaliation that's going on for a killing that happened in LA.
Right.
One of the principal gang members that is involved in all of that also happens to be on one of my crews. Obviously, I'm not going to give you names or anything, but
Sure.
um, his brother was just killed,
Mm.
and then his best friend was just killed,
Oh,
and so it just flared up here, and it happened in LA, but they brought it here, and there's a lot more to the story, but
sure.
it's very isolated and small. It's just a few main actors doing a lot of the work.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you'll be happy to know that two of them are involved in my program, and so we're really moving them away from that.
I mean, honestly, it seems like OBA is one of the most effective gang intervention programs that I've ever heard of. It seems like anything that doesn't really remove people from that environment, it's almost like they can't think outside of it until they're in this radically different environment.
Yeah, I would agree. And what it is, but see, a lot of people have this image, they've conjured up this image of gang members as being, the super predator lurking out there,
Yeah.
ready to, what I know gang members that are struggling in school, trying to get through algebra. I
Yeah.
know gang members that have babies that are trying to figure out how they're going to buy diapers.
Right.
I know gang members that have come and sat in this office and looked at me and said, "I want to be a regular man."
Right.
Right? And so it's so rendering that, they would come to you. I had a gang member once come to me, Hannah, and say, I was at his house and I said, what is it that I can do for you? What do you really need? And he looked at me and he said, will you teach me how to be a man? And I said, what does that mean? He said, will you teach me how to shave, how to put on a tie? I mean, it was just, yeah. And so I said, of course I'll do that. Of course I'll do that.
Well,
He
because a
was a,
lot of these kids are neglected. They
yeah.
didn't have proper role models, and even worse, they can be very abused.
And all of the above happened to this particular person. When I went to that person's house, his mom was laid out just high as she could be
Mm,
on the front porch. Uh, but these are guys that really are looking for something else. They're
yeah.
really looking for something else, but people don't understand how do we give them that something else, and move away from the mental stigma that they are bad people that are going to hurt me.
I mean, the story you just told me reminds me of course, of Father Boyle and, his two
Mhm.
wonderful books, Tattoos on the Heart, and I forget the name of the second one, but so you have a book. Is that what you
Mhm.
were saying? What's your book about?
It's called From the Hood to the Woods, and it's about how you move groups of kids and how you change lives over the span of time by introducing them to the outdoors. And what if you want to create a program like ours, these are the steps that you need to take. And then it why hasn't the environmental and conservation industries and employment sector been more accepting and helping in terms of bringing more people of color and inviting them out there. So I've
Mm,
been talking all over the United States before COVID hit, and even after COVID hit, I've been giving these workshops
sure.
about that. The book hasn't come out yet. It's in its
Okay.
final phases of editing.
Oh, it's
I'll
so
make sure you
exciting.
get a signed copy, Hannah.
I will. I'm coming to the book release party. Well, that's fantastic. I mean, when an organization can create a replication process, really the
Mhm,
sky's the limit to,
mhm.
where it can mushroom up all over the place. I mean, really, it sounds like
Right.
every city in America should have an OBA that focuses on, I forget what you call them in the beginning, the neglected people or the ignored people,
Underserved,
underserved,
overlooked, and avoided
overlooked.
population.
Which you know what? I like that better than the at-risk term. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that's a handy term, but I
Yeah.
feel like it's over, stayed its welcome.
Yeah, it has. It
It's
really has.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's such a catch-all, and these kids aren't, they're not one size fits all.
No.
They all have unique histories, unique challenges, and unique gifts to bring. I mean, that's what always upsets me the most is whether it's racism or poverty, whatever it is, it's just that waste of talent and usefulness that these young men want to give to the world. And
Mhm.
so I just applaud your efforts so much. Now
Thank you.
you had gone away for a while and then come
I
back,
did.
right?
I did.
You had had some big opportunity or something?
Well, so I got invited by the White House to be at a signing of the Great American Outdoors Initiative, and then I met quite a few, high level folks there. But what I
That was
realized,
during
well,
Obama
that
years?
was Obama.
Hmm.
And they invited people from all over the United States that were doing the kind of work that we were doing, and they identified me as one, and so I got invited. But while I was there, I realized I'm living out too small a platform
Hmm.
for what OBA needs to be doing. And
Hmm.
so I set it up and I wrote this 22-page transition plan and I set it up with my board and we brought in a new executive director and who was a former OBA. And I went off to the federal government to work for the National Park Service uh, to manage over 300 youth service programs. I was allocating congressional funds into 58 national parks. So I was called the Pacific West Regional Manager of the National Park Service.
Wow.
And my sole purpose was to look at how do we increase diversity and how do we make programs more efficient. for
Mhm.
serving youth because the National Park Service was really struggling at that time
Yeah.
with bringing in more diverse youth. And
Yep.
so I did that for 5 years until I couldn't stand the bureaucracy anymore. And I
Yeah.
said, I'm going back to my community. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Well,
but
gosh, and you had to be based in the capital for that, or could you work from
no,
home? You could work from.
I worked part from home, and I had an office in San Francisco.
Okay.
That's where the regional offices. But I started out doing some work in DC. But yeah, so I would be here, and then I really lodged myself in a little office at Villa Park. The Park Service said, "Oh no, we don't do that." And I said, "Let's just try it." So I spent some time in Villa Park, being a National Park Service person. Then I went to another park in
Uh,
Thousand Oaks, and then I had my office in San Francisco.
Wow, but then you're like, okay, I just want to go home now, and
Yeah,
yeah.
I was tired of the travel and tired of the really trying to push through these ideas that the Park Service wasn't quite ready for.
So maybe it's a dumb question, but why is it that being in nature is so powerful, like both for the individual and for engendering a sense of belonging in community? Do you have any stories of watching youth transform because of being outdoors?
Yeah, actually, I do. But let's get back to the first part of your question: is
Sure.
why is it so powerful? And I think uh, one of the things is that it really does strip a youth down to some very fundamental pieces of what they are. The same way that we do when we're talking about gang intervention work. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Um, so what we do when we're doing gang intervention work is we essentially we replicate a gang, right? So what are the six things that are attractive? What's the gravitational pull of a gang? And that is, a sense of family, right? Identity, significance, purpose, safety, and money.
Mm,
So if you can replicate those things and have them sort of longitudinally be in the life of a person, you're essentially recreating a gang that is much better and they feel safer. For instance, yesterday, one of the people on our crew, his brother was just shot and killed. And I went over there and all the other people, crew members signed a card and I went over there with flowers and a card. So to let them know, because he called in and he said, I can't come. My head's in the wrong place. And we always said, your head's not in the right place. You need. So we took flowers and a card over there to show them that we're family. We're part
yeah.
of your family here. And so getting back to the thing about common ground is that's what's created in the out of doors.
Mm,
Sorry, Hannah, my phone keeps ringing.
that's okay. You're a busy man.
Um, so, and I think some of the things that some of the transformation I've seen, the most powerful transformation I've ever seen, um, besides, what happens when we're out on a 10-day, a 12-day, we just recently got back from a 26-day course that was in the Redwoods, is that people come to understand that they have to be part, they can be independent, but they have to be interdependent as part of
The
the
group.
group. And just group functioning is super, super transformative when they realize, oh, if I don't pull my share, I'm not going to be part of this group. I'm not going to eat tonight or whatever it is, but group functioning and the common ground in the outdoors. But the one transformative thing is we once had a guy whose father was a gang member, whose father was killed, and um, he said that he came into OBA and he said he's here. His one goal in life when we did the talking circle was his one goal in life was to avenge the death of his father. And so we kept him in OBA for 3 years. I hired him. He became like my right hand man. And one day he came into OBA and he was crying. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, I have to tell you that the guy who murdered my father got on the bus this morning when I was on my way to OBA. And I said, yeah. And he said, I did nothing. And I said, you did the right thing. And he said, I did nothing. And I said, nothing is the right thing. What would your father want you right now? And he said, yeah. He said, but I would never believe that I could do such a thing. He said, thank you. And he thanked us for giving him the strength to do nothing, right? I said, yes. So that was a very powerful transformation for me over 3 years. And then he wanted to go into the army. That was his big thing, to avenge his dad's death and go into the army. I said, that ain't happening.
Right.
But we got him to move away from the army and got him to go and pursue a degree in environmental studies at Prescott College. Now he's in a master's program, and
Wow.
he's doing well. We are the ones who took him. OBA staff took him to college because his family didn't have the resources. So we took him and got him set up in his room and bought him food and everything. So
I
yeah.
mean, maybe I'm romanticizing it, but I can kind of picture that being a movie, like from beginning to end, his father dying and just the
Yeah.
whole arc of change and transformation when you are part of something bigger than yourself and people
Mhm.
believe in you
Mhm.
and you're able to do nothing. I mean, that is very powerful.
Yeah. So proud of him.
I
And
bet.
he's very much in our lives still. He writes me all the time. So
Wow. So I can't wait to have your book. Is it going to come out like before the end of the year?
before the end of 2021?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
super.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully the pandemic's at a better place and you can have an in-person celebration.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure some of our listeners are wondering, is there any role for me to play? Like, what kind of volunteer positions do you have available, or is everyone staff?
Yeah. So our staff, there are a couple of requirements that we have of our staff because of the nature of the work we do. The first requirement is that they go through our institute. It's called the Diverse Outdoor Leaders Institute. It's a 15-week training, and they go through a pretty rigorous training, including trauma-informed care, wilderness first aid, leave no trace wilderness principles, how to backpack, how to camp, how to car camp, all the other stuff. So you can't really come in and volunteer and say, I'm going to take the kids on a trip.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. Well,
Especially because of the populations that we're working with sometimes.
and I'm picturing these people being mostly like in their early 20s or mid 20s. And like,
Mhm.
these are like recent college graduates, or do you take folks just with a high school degree?
We don't require to have a degree. What we do require is for them to be willing to work hard enough to get through our curriculum. So
Mm-hmm.
you have 15 weeks, and I have had 50-year-old men come in that couldn't read. I'm not kidding, Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
I had this one guy from Mississippi who really wanted to be an OBA instructor, and he couldn't read.
Mm-hmm.
So we brought in a tutor and we brought in another instructor to help him get through the course, and he got through.
Oh,
So you can be 50, but you just have to be physically fit, be willing to get through our curriculum. But getting back to your question about volunteering, we have other people that come in and volunteer to help us tag gear, help us take
sure.
our bags and wash them, help us. We have a lot of mailings that go out, so there's a
Sure.
bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I invite anybody. The other reason we call it the Diverse Outdoor Leaders Institute is we really like our instructors that come from the same communities, the same
Sure.
context in life, and look like the kids that we serve.
Yep.
But I would invite anybody to come in, and there are a couple of UUs that are still at the church that work
Oh,
for us. Yeah,
fantastic.
through the training. Right.
Did you develop that training?
I did. I developed it. So we're in our 13th year. So I developed it 13 years ago,
Wow.
and it gets better every year. And I think PCC is looking at it for a non-credit certification course now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you must be so excited to see the potential for this being replicated in other
Um,
cities. And I imagine you might be having to do some traveling if you get kind of hired as the first consultant on the ground. Like, here's how you do it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to retiring in about 3 years. I'm bringing another guy up, excellent guy, and we're bringing also a young female in that's acting as his lieutenant. So I'm giving him the benefit of everything I've had.
Yeah,
Because believe it or not, I've been doing this now almost for 40 years.
it's amazing. Now,
Yeah.
one question I have is I would think that, the more woke city managements would see the value in investing in this kind of program so that they're not, dealing with murders and mayhem, right? Um, is it, I mean, is that part of the replication is here's how you get money from your city? Or is that really hard to do now because, municipalities are so hard up now?
No, at least in Pasadena, that hasn't been difficult. Our city manager has been very, very amenable to meeting. We just met 2 weeks ago. He said, "Tell me how your programs work," and I made recommendations to him. So it was City of Pasadena, NAACP, and OBA. We all sat at the table, and I said, "Here's what we need. I need to bring into the city through the rec department." And
Nice.
so it's under review right now. And I said, it doesn't come at a little price tag. If you want to affect change, you've got to
Right.
invest in it, you know. So he's fine. I mean, he's not fine with the price tag, but he's fine with reviewing. He says, I have a keen interest in this, so we'll
Oh,
see what happens. But I think the most important thing is that if you can employ young people, I think, and then keep them in the employment pipeline and train them so they have some marketable skill.
mhm.
That's what our Wildlands Restoration Academy is all about, is train them and get them out there working in conservancies, get them out there working for different federal agencies. Then they can leave a whole bunch of what was in their past behind them and keep moving forward.
Well,
That is,
it reminds me when Mud Baron was trying to do programs like that through the
mm,
Muir School Garden, teaching them even like catering and cooking
yeah,
and landscape architecture and on and on.
right.
But I mean that's the same concept is yeah, give them a saleable skill.
Yeah, Mud and I worked closely together for a couple of years. But I want to add some clarity, Hannah, before
Sure.
we take off, is that
Mhm.
we're not just doing gang intervention work. We're just serving, remember, those three areas of community. So the vast majority of our kids are just kids who have not had an opportunity or access to engage in some meaningful time outdoors. And
Yes.
so that in and of itself has a powerful impact on changing the way the kid sees themselves in the natural world. So
And
make that clear.
you mostly find those kids through the Pasadena high schools.
Well, we work with some of our partners. Like we work with NAACP, we work with Flint Ridge, we work with Pasadena Police Department, we work with the school district, we work
Right.
with the probation department, we work with the churches, but
Nice.
not, and then of course we work with the school district, and we're on John Muir campus.
Right.
But we work with NGOs, nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, all across the greater LA area, into San Bernardino, up into Palmdale. And we're
Wow.
working on the Torres Martinez Indian Reservation in Coachella Valley.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think we have captured the essence of this, and I appreciate you making that point clear that really it's about getting urban kids who are stuck in urban settings
Mhm.
out in the nature. And we're so lucky here in Southern California. We've got nature in a lot of places.
Exactly.
We've
So
got
close
great,
to us.
yeah, great trails, or like trail highways. You could hike for months out there.
You can. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
this has been so inspiring to learn about. I think I've asked you all my questions. Did you have any last thoughts for us?
Um, no, I just want to make sure that everybody that listens to this podcast and anybody who doesn't, I want them to tell them that it is absolutely critical and essential that every child, not just urban kids of color, but every child maintain some sort of connection to the natural world. I mean, that's where we're going to find preservation of civilization, right? But
I agree.
maintain some sort of connection to the natural world. And just like when you opened up with that song, I was just sitting there, the song by Alice Smith. I was just sitting there thinking, it's been so long since I've been connected to that kind of peace. But
Hmm.
every child can find the same kind of peace in the outdoors. And it's just, there's a real meaningful thing that happens when you take a kid out of the city. It slows the pace of everything down. It's almost like going back in time.
Yes.
And every kid needs to go back in time. You know,
Wow.
as we tell the people in our crews, your past does not dictate your future, but you should always remember where you've been.
Well, it's almost like it's a worldly salvation, right? Like
That's true.
yeah, that's the business I'm in, right? I talk about
Yeah,
worldly salvation in my ministry a lot, but it's true. It's the connecting to something greater than yourself, and not just the human world, but the animal world, the plant world, and
right.
it bodes
Absolutely.
well for our survival as a species if
That's right.
everyone can be connected. Well, I'm glad you like the Alice Smith because we're gonna end with my favorite song by her, and I thought it fit with the theme today. It's called New Religion, and it's basically about wanting to outgrow the old so you can you know enter into the new and self-actualize and all that good stuff. But
Yeah,
so thank you, Charles Thomas, for taking the
you're
time to
welcome.
speak with us on Pop Talk today. And keep up the great work. Listeners and viewers, you can learn more about POP at poppasadena.org. You can find this episode on Radio Jornalera Facebook page. Please share widely and play a role in the movement for social change, the beautiful struggle for freedom and equality for all. So big thanks to our Radio Jornalera technicians, Manuel Vicente and Francesco Canas. And we end with this last Alice Smith song. It's from her first album, For Lovers, Dreamers, and Me. Good night and good luck.
Mhm.